Well, it's official. I've sold my soul to Capcom for the foreseeable future because Monster Hunter Rise is pretty good. There's a decent amount to unpack here, so I'm going to get into it right now. After the release of Monster Hunter World, Capcom had some pretty big shoes to fill. The problem is that they transitioned from strong hardware, or the PS4, Xbox One, to weak hardware, or weaker hardware, the Nintendo Switch. So how do you fill that gap? Well, by removing heavy customization, environmental interactions, larger maps, lower graphical quality, or not removing you get it. Capturing academic life, and the clutch claw. Basically, Rise takes World's expansive scale and dumbs it down. However, that's in exchange for something I will get into in a moment. Monster Hunter Rise isn't a perfect game. In fact, it's missing a lot of stuff from Monster Hunter World. But what Rise does is that it makes a game that you can sink hours into with some incredible usage of a grappling-esque mechanic, among other things. The wire bug is the defining trait of Monster Hunter Rise. It's essentially a grappling hook that you can use anywhere you want. You can use it to perform special moves, climb walls, and move around the map, and even recover from attacks. This allows for faster-paced hunts and a way to ease frustration of getting pummeled by a monster too quickly. The wire bug is essentially the clutch claw dialed up to 100. You can't really grab onto monsters anymore, but the mechanic is pretty fleshed out and a good way to combine both movement and combat potential. Rise further increases the ease of movement with the addition of the Palamute. This is a rideable dog who functions similar to Raider Riders in Monster Hunter World. In this game, the Palamute is controllable, meaning that you can use them in combat as well. They can be used to help you while using potions or sharpen your weapon, and you don't have to worry about getting hit because you'll be moving. Of course, Palicos still exist, and they're a lot of fun to keep around. They don't offer the same movement options as the Palamutes, but they've got a strong set of skills to keep up with combat. Unlike World, you can't swap between different styles of Palico. Instead, each Palico has a specific style, and you can choose that on your first Palico, but you can also hire additional ones in the buddy area to change up your roles. There's fighters, bombardiers, there's gatherers, support, or assist, and healers. Some of these skills are RNG in which they obtain, so you're gonna have to spend some time shopping around a little bit. However, it's not too bad since you can kind of customize your search and hopefully get the Palico that you want. Additionally, you can't mount monsters the way you did in World. Instead, you can ride and control them. It's a bit more of an interactive system that helps speed up the flow of combat. And it also increases the strength of mounting, in my opinion, as it makes it a little bit faster and you output more damage onto the monster you're trying to kill. Rise's main focus is basically combat. It sacrifices a lot of things, and it also gives a lot to you as well. A lot of the exploration, as well as tracking monsters, is gone. Areas are somewhat smaller, but the wire bug makes room for more vertical exploration. Essentially, you can kind of go wherever you want on the existing map, as opposed to set routes that World kind of had set up. You can climb mountains, fling yourself over obstacles. There still are some limitations, but there's also a lot of possibility. I'm going to show you some applications of the wire bug. Anyways, on top of all that, Rise introduces switch skills. These are quite literally swappable moves you can use. So see, instead of doing this charge shelling attack, you can actually do this. A lot of these aren't as drastic changes as the one I just showed, and unlocking them can be a bit of a hassle. But there's a lot of good that comes from having mild customizable moves. You can alter your moveset to be stronger against specific monsters, or just to suit your style of gameplay. What you do is more in your hands than in World, where your essential combat choices were just choosing a weapon. It makes the experience of Rise very refined and pretty unique. I've spent a lot of time in this review comparing Rise to World, and that's mainly because World is the first Monster Hunter I really ever enjoyed. The 3DS controls for older Monster Hunters during my time of knowing about this series were kind of a pain for me, and I just didn't have fun playing 3 on the Wii U. Both Rise and World excel in different areas. It's important to note that these two games are not, one does not necessarily make itself better than the other, in my opinion. I think they're just very different games. Both have a fun combat experience, but I think Rise has more customization and it lets you be stronger. World had that feeling, but it took more time to get used to it due to how heavy everything felt. And is it that good though? It really depends. I think Rise has a bit of a power scaling problem. I played through the main story, the village quests, and I had literally no problems. I didn't have to upgrade my gear at all. The only time I did it was just to speed up the pace of a mission, but it was never necessary. And I could clear pretty much all the village quests with my eyes closed. Hub quests or multiplayer quests challenge me a bit more. They're not perfect by any standard, but I still haven't had many issues. In World, I felt like I was struggling consistently throughout the entire game, even with upgraded gear. And while this is a good thing for me, as someone who doesn't mind games being a bit of a cakewalk, it might present a problem for other players who want a higher level of challenge. Monster Hunter is kind of this game that used to more often provide a decent challenge, and I feel like while Rise has the potential to still do that, it's not as difficult as the previous iteration. As I said, Rise really has a lot going for it in the combat department. There's just so much to do. Like, there's so many different options you have with the wire bug and changing whether you want a Palico or a Palamute, and it comes at the price of weaker hardware and less exploration. There's a lot that feels like it was dialed down from World, which can be chalked up to the hardware limitations, I'd say. For the most part, my main criticism of Rise is just due to things that aren't technologically possible with the Switch. It's something Capcom could fix if they made a new Monster Hunter game not on the Switch, but it does mean that that would have to be the next plan. I'm sure Rise was planned to be a Switch game the entire time, so dialing things back was part of the overall plan initially. Even if there were PlayStation and Xbox versions of this game, the base game would remain the same as long as it's on the Switch, because the PC version exists, and it's the exact same game, just with dialed-up visuals, better textures. So really, I think Rise is just probably the most combat-oriented Monster Hunter game I've played. It sticks to its strengths while also improving on things that it keeps from World. And we lose a lot of smaller things, but Rise makes up for it in gameplay. The number of choices and options available to you is fantastic, and it really makes a unique Monster Hunter game. The story. Yeah, I didn't really watch, nor did I really care about any of it. As far as I could tell, it's not really all that great. It could be better, could be worse, kind of situation. The story, the cutscenes with the poems that they have describing every monster and locale are nice, but nothing that I felt the need to sit around for. Monster Hunter for me is a game where I hunt monsters. I think the overall story and characters are probably better than World's, but it's really not saying much because World's story was boring and unskippable, and I would open up a story cutscene and I'd go on my phone and I wouldn't pay attention to it because I didn't care. I just genuinely did not care. It's hard to get me to care for Monster Hunter's story when the hook of the game is I'm fighting big monster and I kill them. Rise also takes multiplayer and separates it from single player. You can play the whole game in multiplayer, or hub quests, or do none of it and just play the story. However, the high rank hunts, which are the thing you want to get to if you intend to play Sunbreak, the expansion coming out later this year, you'll have to do hub quests because they go to high rank. Story quests do not, and they're kind of a cakewalk. And I think this divide is decent in the sense that we don't have to do the story. My problem is that I just wish that I could do the story with friends just to go through it, and you literally just can't. And I think splitting these two up works from a gameplay perspective in that you can make the story quests a lot easier, so it's easier for people to farm materials on their own, but you also have the problem of now you can't play with your friends, so if your friends want to do a hunt, they have to be in multiplayer to do high ranks, and it's a really rough thing to figure out because I feel like they should just combine all the content and just let people do what they want. It's another thing that comes from World where I feel like it's an improvement over World's multiplayer system that made me wait for everyone to watch a cutscene, but also it's a bit of a detriment because it still could be better. Also, there are a lot of tutorials. There's so many tutorials. The game bombards you with tutorials in the beginning, and I got a tutorial every, minute or two, which is nice. It's nice to learn new things, but I don't need to. I want to learn on the fly when I'm playing Monster Hunter. There's a lot of things that I just learned by playing the game. I do a move, and then in the middle of that move, I'll press a different button that I usually do, and it gives me a different outcome, and I'm like, oh, I can use this for 7 different applications. It's just something nice to do in Monster Hunter that I feel like putting so many tutorials in is just It deters people from wanting to play the game early. Anyways, Monster Hunter Rise does exactly what I want in a Monster Hunter game. It drives the focus of combat home and doesn't waste any time getting you into the action. While we lose a lot from World, I'm hopeful that Sunbreak will give us a great experience for the future of Rise that keeps it standing on its own 2 feet, even when it's forced to be compared to Monster Hunter World. Separating these two are different games. They're both Monster Hunter, but their focuses are on 2 different things. And while I would love to see all of these things combined in a future Monster Hunter game, I don't know what Capcom's plans are for the future, of course. As always, thanks for watching, and please like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. I'll see you next week, where I review something. If this review is going up at the time that I recorded it, then next week will be something I decide on later. If it's going up the week after I recorded it, then next week is probably something related to the Pokemon game. Well, we'll see what happens, but yeah. Alright, thanks for watching, guys.
Oh, what the fuck is that? What's he got in his tail?
He's got the double ball!
Wait, what does he have in his
He
tail?
has a giant ball.
Oh, God! He's got a big ball of shit in his tail.